going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do something a little different as we're going to discuss the 2022 Oscars, because it's never too early to discuss award season. Now, I normally don't do these highly speculative sort of videos, especially since a lot of these movies don't even have a trailer yet, and I don't claim to be an expert at predicting the Oscars or anything, but this is all just meant to be in good fun. These aren't going to be super in-depth, especially as this is my first time doing one of these videos. My criteria for each of these predictions is very bare bones, and we have to keep in mind that things can change exponentially between now and the end of the year. There are probably movies that haven't even been announced yet that might drop at the last minute, so this is just based off what's expected to be released this year, as of now. So for this video, I'm going to be discussing what I think will be the Best Animated Feature nominees, as well as the Best Picture nominees. I'm not going to really get into any of the other categories here, nor am I going to do a separate video for now. Maybe when things get closer, but we'll see. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments what you think will be a contender at the Oscars next year, as well as don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you like these videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button for more movie-related content on a near daily basis. But let's jump right in. So we'll start with Best Animated Feature. I feel this is usually a lot easier to predict than Best Picture. Usually you just have to look for whatever Disney and Pixar is releasing, and those fill up at least 2 spots. And then from there are only so many other movies throughout the year that even come close to being on the same level reception-wise. It's usually a pretty straightforward list, though that doesn't mean there can't be any surprises. But I have 2 honorable mentions I want to go over real quick. The first is a movie called Apollo 10½, which will be the new film from Richard Linklater, focusing on the Apollo 11 moon landing and a bunch of children's fantasies related to it. Now, Linklater's a very ambitious director, and this uses the same rotoscoping technique he used in Waking Life and A Scanner Darkly, but ambitious doesn't always translate to surefire Oscar nominee for him. Boyhood is the only film of his that was nominated for Best Picture, while Before Midnight and Before Sunset also picked up Best Adapted Screenplay nominations. But that's it, so that's why I don't think he's a surefire lock for this category. We don't know the release date yet. Netflix is distributing it though, but if it's definitely getting released later this year, we'll see once footage drops. And my second honorable mention is called Wendell and Wild, which will be another Netflix release. It's a horror comedy starring Key and Peele as the voices of the 2 title characters, and they both also co-wrote the screenplay. Plus, it's directed by Henry Selick, who also gave us The Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, and Coraline, the latter of which was nominated for Best Animated Feature. All but one of his films have been critically acclaimed, and unless he simply lost his touch, I have a feeling that streak will continue with this. So this has a chance of swapping out with my number 5 pick on here. The only reason I'm not putting it in as a lock yet is because it doesn't seem to be a guaranteed 2021 release as of now. It's currently slated for this year, but Netflix's CEO said this could possibly move to next year. So once we know for sure what's going on with it, then we'll go from there. But as for the main 5 films, this is what I'm thinking, from least likely to most likely to get nominated. For my number 5, I'm going with Raya and the Last Dragon. And I know that's been critically acclaimed, and I just got through saying that Disney's usually a lock, but there are 2 things that I think might prevent it from being a guaranteed nominee. One is the other big Disney movie that's getting released later this year, which I'll discuss in a minute, and 2 is the fact that it was released in the first week of March, which is technically at the very beginning of this award cycle. So, depending on what happens with the 2 honorable mentions, there's a chance this might be too far out from people's memories. But I mean, then again, we did get Shaun the Sheep in February and Onward in March, and they both got nominated this year, even though it's partially because options were limited. But that's my only reservation against this. Number 4 will be Ron's Gone Wrong, which is produced by Locksmith Animation, but will be distributed by 20th Century, which is under Disney. And it's basically about a friendship between a boy and his talking machine. Now, that doesn't exactly scream Oscars to me, so I think this can go either way, because this is the first film Locksmith Animation's producing, so we'll have to see some footage first and go from there, because I don't know what to expect. But I'm placing it higher than Raya only because we do know it's getting released in October, so it will be fresher in people's heads come award season. For my number 3, we're going with The Mitchells vs. the Machines. While the fact it was released in April would be the only thing I'd hold against it, This received even higher critical acclaim than Raya did. Plus, it's from the same team that produced Into the Spider-Verse, which itself won Best Animated Feature, so I'm almost positive this will secure a nomination. I'd even say it would be the guaranteed winner if it wasn't for the next two movies on here, which aren't out yet, but given the usual trends, are almost guaranteed to take home the top prize, unless they just unexpectedly don't do as well critically. So, for my runner-up, it's Luca, Pixar's big release for the year. It's brought to us by Enrico Casarosa, who also directed the short La Luna, which itself got nominated for Best Animated Short a decade ago. And I mean, from the footage we got so far, it looks absolutely beautiful. There seems to be heavy themes of friendship present throughout, and the film's been drawing some parallels to Call Me By Your Name, which was another huge Oscar film, so it also has that going for it, even though Casarosa says it's coincidental. And from the bits I've read of Casarosa discussing it, it seems like he's really passionate about this, so I feel there will be a lot of heart and soul in there. While I have it at number 2, right now it's neck and neck with my top choice on here. And that would be Encanto, Disney's other big animated film this year, and also their 60th animated feature overall, at least under the Walt Disney Animation Studios banner. One of the reasons I don't think Raya will be a lock to get nominated is because I think Disney will be too busy pushing this film instead. It's from the same directors of Zootopia, which itself won Best Animated Feature. Lin-Manuel Miranda is writing the music. It's getting released in November, which is when prime award season films get dropped. And like I said, it's their 60th movie, so I think it would be just special that a milestone movie of theirs also won Best Animated Feature. The only doubt I have for it would be if it just doesn't do so well critically. But lately, Disney's been on a roll for the most part. The majority of their films this past decade or so were at least nominated, and they usually do win. And if it's not, it's Pixar. So, like I said, it's going to come down between this and Luca. But with Luca having the June release and this having the November release, on top of being a milestone film, I feel this has the better chance of winning, in my opinion, as of now. Moving on to Best Picture, first thing I will say is, I don't think any of the animated films will also get nominated for Best Picture. I know it's not unheard of, but that hasn't been the case since Toy Story 3, so over 10 years ago. So unless Luca or Encanto are considered borderline flawless or something, I just don't see them being considered for Best Picture. But I have 10 honorable mentions for this that I'll go through pretty quickly and in alphabetical order. And they are Being the Ricardos, the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz biopic written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. I know production's underway, but no release date for this one yet. I know Sorkin's films have this crowd-pleasing element to them, with Trial of the Chicago 7 itself getting nominated for a bunch of Oscars this year, but this just seems way smaller in scale, so I'm not 100% on it nabbing Best Picture. I do think there will be a push for it in the acting categories, though. Then there's Belfast, Kenneth Branagh's upcoming film about a boy and his mom in the 60s. The plot summary as of now is extremely vague, and I know Branagh's not exactly an Oscar favorite, but it's set for a November release as of now. It's got Judi Dench, who is an awards favorite, and the fact that it's a period piece set around the life of a family does make it seem like it has a chance. Then there's Don't Look Up, Adam McKay's ensemble film about two astronomers trying to warn everyone about a meteor headed for Earth. Now, I know Adam McKay's pivoted to dramedy territory in the last 5 or 6 years, with his last 2 films getting Best Picture nominations, and this does have a ton of actors who are also Oscar favorites, but from the way this is being described, this seems like it'll head more into comedic territory, so I don't think lightning is going to strike a third time for him, considering comedies aren't usually Oscar shoo-ins, but this could totally surprise me. Who knows? Then there's Dune, and I know a lot of people really want to believe Dune's a lock to get nominated. I just don't see it, as much as I would love for that to be the case. The Oscars rarely recognize genre-heavy films in the Best Picture category, and if it does, it's usually something that has some ties to the real world, like The Shape of Water. I would say the closest to full-on, really genre-heavy would be Black Panther, at least in the last few years or so. But I just don't see a trend where huge sci-fi or fantasy epics are seriously in the running. I think this will pick up a lot for the technical side of things, but Best Picture, I'm not buying it yet. Then we have The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which is about the televangelist Tammy Faye and Jim Baker. You have Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield as your leads. It's getting a September release, and it's by Michael Showalter, whose last dramatic effort, The Big Sick, did get a Best Original Screenplay nomination. And I've heard this circulate a few times as being a potential contender for award season given who's involved. My hesitation is, The Big Sick was also from a very personal screenplay by Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon, whereas this doesn't have that personal touch. I'm not saying it won't be good, I'm just saying Showalter's not some awards favorite or anything, and this will only be his second dramatic effort, so we'll have to see how this goes. Then there's In the Heights, which I know I've heard rumblings from people who went to press screenings already, saying it's amazing and all that, and I know it's from Lin-Manuel Miranda and John M. Chu, and I do think it looks incredible. I am really looking forward to this movie. I just think it's going to have some stiff competition from some other musicals we're getting later in the year, which I'll get to in a minute. And I know it has that perfect summer movie feel, and that's why it's getting released in June, but I do think that that release date is what's going to hurt it. But I do want to mention it because I could be totally surprised here. I have heard it's incredible, so maybe this will leave more an impression by award season than I'm giving it credit for. Then there's King Richard, the biopic starring Will Smith as Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena Williams. I've heard this film get thrown around a bunch of times, and honestly, I think Will Smith will secure a Best Actor nomination, but beyond that, I don't know there. This has the makings of an inspirational story, so it might be what the Academy's looking for, but I just have this feeling it's going to be more reliant on Smith's performance more than anything. Director Reynaldo Marcus Green's other films, while I haven't seen them, haven't received glowing reviews themselves, so that leaves me hesitant as far as how this is going to be beyond Smith. Next up is The Last Duel, which is one of two films we're getting this year from Ridley Scott, after being delayed from last year due to the pandemic. I think this actually has a pretty good shot of all these honorable mentions. It's a period drama, it's co-written by 3 Oscar-winning or Oscar-nominated screenwriters, plus it's got an October release date. But while I think this will get some Oscars love in some form or another, I think its Best Picture chances will be overshadowed a bit by the other Ridley Scott film this year, which seems to be getting more of the buzz, and we'll discuss that later. Next up is Mass, which is about the parents of both the victim and perpetrator of a mass shooting meeting years later. Now, a lot of people I follow on Twitter who've seen Mass say it's one of the best movies of the year, if not the best, and that it'll absolutely be a contender come award season. However, Twitter is mainly where I've been hearing that. I know it's received a lot of critical acclaim, but everywhere I read about this movie, I rarely hear it brought up. It reads more as just a really well done, smaller scale film to me. And the fact that Bleecker Street picked it up, who I read doesn't really do a good job of pushing its awards contenders, leaves me a bit hesitant. I think maybe it'll pick up some acting nominations, like for Jason Isaacs, but I don't know yet as far as Best Picture. And finally, The Tragedy of Macbeth, a rare solo film by Joel Cohen that was recently just picked up by Apple. And I know Apple's been trying to make more of an awards push in recent years. And I know when the Coen brothers give us a more serious effort, it usually does well in award season. But I think this is going to be another case of a film picking up acting nominations and not much else. I think with Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand in the leads, you can almost guarantee they're gonna grab nominations, but I was reading that the film was shot entirely on sound stages to give it this feel that's, quote, untethered from reality, according to an interview with the film's composer. So I don't know if it's taking this more fantastical approach, and if it is, I don't think it's going to get a Best Picture nomination. Which sounds like a minuscule reason for it not to be nominated, but like I said with Dune, it's rare for a genre-heavy film to be nominated for Best Picture, and if this has elements that lean in heavily to a particular genre, I don't know. But now it's time for the 10 films that I think will actually be nominated. Again, these will be from the least likely to most likely be nominated. For my number 10, it's The French Dispatch, and this one and my number 9 choice, when I say least likely, I really mean I am not 100% sold on them yet. Now, Wes Anderson's one of my favorite directors, and I'm honestly way more excited for this than literally any other movie on here. But I know his films don't automatically translate to guaranteed Best Picture contender. I mean, I know Grand Budapest Hotel was nominated for Best Picture, and his 2 animated films were each nominated for Best Animated Feature, but I wouldn't call him an Oscars favorite. I could be wrong, as this had one of the biggest delays, and the theory is so that it can make a proper awards push. And I wouldn't be surprised if an attempt is made to push this one. But considering this is also an ensemble piece about separate stories all thematically linked, that's what still makes me iffy. I think this will more than likely lock in a Best Original Screenplay nomination like a number of Anderson's other movies, and while I think it has one of the better chances of nabbing a Best Picture nomination, I'm still not 100% sure on it yet. Number 9 is Dear Evan Hansen, and as I was writing this list up, the trailer for this actually dropped, and to be honest, It does look like one of your typical inspirational teen dramas, which makes me a little less confident about it now, but I'm still convinced it might have a chance at getting a Best Picture nomination because it's getting released in September, which is right when award season really kicks off, and it's based on a play that's received a ton of critical acclaim and did really well at the Tonys. I know it's two separate mediums, but I feel Universal's really going to try replicating that same success in film form. And considering Ben Platt, who starred in the play, is reprising his role for this, it does already have people talking that at the very least there may be an awards push for him. My one hesitation is that, like In the Heights, I feel this might be a bit overshadowed by some other musicals, which we'll get to in a minute. Number 8 is The Power of the Dog. I know it has its sights set for a late 2021 release, though nothing appears set yet. But it's written and directed by Jane Campion, whose other films have been nominated at the Oscars before, including Best Picture. It's got a strong cast that includes Benedict Cumberbatch, Kirsten Dunst, and Jesse Plemons, and the original novel was written in the 60s, so I assume the film would take place around then as well, so it's another period piece, and the novel itself is considered author Thomas Savage's best work. So the fact it has strong source material to work off of, an Oscar-caliber director and cast, along with a potential fall release date, has me thinking this will be a major contender. For number 7, it's Cyrano, the second film from Joe Wright we're getting this year. While The Woman in the Window's Oscar hopes are all but gone, I think this will make up for that, as Wright's films are usually major contenders during award season. And like with Dear Evan Hansen, this is a musical that's based on a play and is bringing back not just the star of said play, in this case Peter Dinklage, but the original writer Erica Schmidt and the original composer Bryce Dessner of The National. So clearly they're going with what they know works. Now, I've actually seen the original play, and I remember it not operating like your traditional musical, as the characters would weave in and out between spoken and sung dialogue. So I'm curious to see how that would translate to film if they stick with that original format, and that would be the only thing I'd say this has against it if that style backfires. But I still think, given who's involved, this has some pretty good chances overall. Number 6 is Passing. This had its premiere at Sundance earlier this year, and I've been hearing nothing but great things about it. It's a period drama, it's based on an acclaimed novel, deals with some heavy subject matter, and has a top-notch cast that includes Tessa Thompson, Ruth Negga, Andre Holland, and Alexander Skarsgård. It seemed like it was one of the more acclaimed films out of Sundance, and I know Sundance itself isn't an indicator of how the Oscars gonna go, but considering the rave reviews and Netflix picking it up for an end-of-the-year release, I assume it's making an awards push, and I think its chances are pretty good as of now. Number 5 is A Journal for Jordan. Now, I think Denzel Washington's going to have a good year at the Oscars between this and The Tragedy of Macbeth. Now, this time he's just directing, but the last film he's directed, Fences, picked up a few nominations itself, including Best Picture, and Washington has been nominated a number of times in the acting categories, and I know those are two totally different things, but I'm sure he'll have similar success when he's strictly behind the camera, just because he's usually an Oscar favorite. Plus, this stars Michael B. Jordan, who's been in a ton of critically acclaimed films himself over the past few years, and we all have just been waiting for him to land that Oscar-worthy role, and I think this will be it. Given that this has a December release lined up, the pieces seem like they're going to fall into place for everyone. Number 4 is Coda, which I heard crushed it at Sundance earlier this year, winning 4 different awards there, and it received rave reviews. It did so well that Apple picked it up for a festival record $25 million. And I say again, they're trying to get into the Oscar game, and it seems like they know what they have on their hands, even with the August release date, which is just ahead of the usual award season. Now, I didn't attend Sundance, but from the hype this movie's gotten, I think we'll be hearing plenty about this. Number 3 is House of Gucci, the second Ridley Scott film we're seeing this year. While I'm admittedly a little more excited for The Last Duel, which as I mentioned earlier, I think does have some chances, I think all eyes will be on this film instead as far as the awards push goes. It's getting released a little later than The Last Duel, and usually the later in the year the better. It's based on a high-profile event, plus you have a cast who have all been nominated for Oscars before leading this, with Lady Gaga and Adam Driver. And then there's just Ridley Scott himself, who's hit much more often than he's missed in the last decade or so, and usually does well when making an Oscar push, at least in terms of picking up nominations. So I'd be pretty surprised if this didn't get a Best Picture nomination. Number 2 is Soggy Bottom, which I'm not sure is the official title or still the working title. Some places listed as Soggy Bottom, others as untitled Paul Thomas Anderson movie, but either way, Paul Thomas Anderson's next film is my runner-up. There's not a whole lot that we know about this one, other than that it's about a high school kid who becomes an actor in the 70s. It's based on an original script, and we know it stars the late Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, Cooper Hoffman, along with Bradley Cooper and Benny Safdie. But this is another one I've been hearing constant talks about for some time, and with the November 25th release date, it seems like it'll be making a push. And while Anderson's films have yet to win anything at the Oscars, his films usually do pick up nominations for something, including 2 Best Picture nominations for There Will Be Blood and The Phantom Thread. So considering he hasn't missed yet in terms of overall quality, I think this will easily continue his streak. But the film most likely to pick up the Best Picture nomination is West Side Story. I mean, this should be pretty obvious. It's a Steven Spielberg movie adapted from one of the most well-known musicals of all time, and whose first adaptation won Best Picture itself. Of everything on here, I think this is all but guaranteed. I am 110% confident on this one. I mean, I know there's always that chance I'm wrong, but considering this initially had a December release date last year, and it got bumped by a whole year, and considering it's from 20th Century, again, a Disney property now, and from arguably the most famous director of all time, like, there's just no way it's not going for the gold here. I think of everything on this list, this will be one of the biggest names, if not the biggest, this award season. So, that's my list. I hope you had fun with it. I know I did. And again, I'd like to repeat, this is all strictly for fun. When it comes down to it, there's really no way you can accurately predict what's going to be an Oscar contender almost a year in advance. There will most certainly be movies popping up at the last second, films that weren't on anyone's radars that exceeded expectations, films that fell below expectations, films that get snubbed despite critical acclaim. Who knows? Even of all these choices, while I'm totally confident with West Side Story being a lock, everything else I could be totally off with. Remember, most of these movies have not even had a trailer out yet. But either way, with things starting to get back to normal and we're getting a lot more in terms of the bigger name stuff, I think it'll be a very good year for movies and hopefully for the Oscars. But let me know, which movies do you think will get nominated next year? Do you agree with this list at all? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it. And for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone and keep having fun with film.